Welcome to the second video in my series on how to get paid on time as a freelancer. If you haven't seen the first video yet, click here for advice on setting up a payment schedule. But right here in this video, I want to talk to you about invoicing and receiving the money. Once the client has agreed to your terms and signed the contract, the next step is to send them an invoice. Now, even if you're just getting started with freelancing, you have to be sending them a proper invoice. A simple email with the amount and your payment details is just not going to cut it. If you want to be treated like a professional and get paid on time, then you have to act like a professional. There are many different ways to create an invoice. Some people will use the invoicing features built into accounting software like Xero or FreshBooks or Wave. Others will use specific invoicing tools like Cushion or Harvest perhaps. But you can also just send a simple PDF that has all the right information on it. Here's what you need to make sure your invoice includes: your details, your client's details, and just a note, they'll often ask you to put their address on the invoice, a description of the work and the amount charged, today's date, and the date the invoice is due with information on how to pay you. You should make the due date on the invoice the date that you need to start the work in order to meet the deadline, and give yourself a bit of leeway in there as well if you can too. That's always a good idea. If that date is tomorrow, then put that. You don't have to give your clients 2 weeks to pay. If they need to meet that deadline, then they will pay you when you need to be paid. I will say though that you need to make absolutely sure you're communicating really well with your client about this. We will cover communication in more depth in the next video, but for now I'll just say that when you send an invoice to your client, you should be pointing out key details like the due date and your preferred payment method, so that those important things aren't accidentally skimmed over and you can make sure you're both on the same page. Let's talk more about payment methods, because the key to getting paid on time is to make it really easy for your clients to pay you so that there's no friction and no excuses. If you live in the same country as your client, then a bank transfer is pretty easy, but that's not so great once your clients are international, as many of mine are. When you're working on projects where you're charging more than several $100s, then PayPal and Stripe fees get pretty astronomical, and international bank transfers are definitely a bit of a nightmare. I had one go missing recently. That took about 2 months to sort out, so I definitely learned my lesson there, and that is why I prefer to use a service called Transferwise, who are the sponsor of this video series. Transferwise is a service you can use for sending money internationally. I get paid using Transferwise every 2 weeks from my contracting job in the US, and it's always hassle-free. What makes them better than PayPal or a bank transfer, in my opinion, is that they charge a really low fee and they use the real mid-market exchange rate, so you end up getting more money at the end of the day. Banks can be a bit sneaky and they'll often say they charge a low fee, but then they'll add a markup to the exchange rate, so you end up getting less than you should. Just as an example here, let me show you. If a client is paying me $1,000, and actually, that's another tip, I always charge clients in the currency of the country that they live in, because that way that's one less step for them to have to do the conversion to work out what the value is. So anyway, $1,000. I can see here that TransferWise will charge an $8 fee, which is pretty great for a transfer of this size. And then I use this compare prices option, and it shows you how much you would get if you did this through a bank. And as you can see, it's sadly much less. Let's check out PayPal as well. Doing these calculations, again, I'd get much less if the client paid me through here, thanks to both the fee and the exchange rate. From looking at these numbers, I actually worked out that by the end of the year, thanks to TransferWise, because that's the way that I get paid, I will have saved about £2,000 from being lost to fees, which is practically a raise, so it's definitely worth caring about this stuff. So check them out, it's a payment option, there's a link in the description where you can go and do that. I definitely recommend them. Like I said, this is what I use for my clients, and a million other people use them as well, so they're very trustworthy. I also find them much easier to use than a bank too, because the site is so nicely designed, and as a designer, I appreciate that sort of thing. What I do on my invoice is I put a clickable link to TransferWise in the payment section, and that way the client just has to click that to log into their account or create one if they don't have one yet, because you can set up either a personal or a business account, and then they can make the payment to me. So I'm making it easier for them by including that link. To make it even easier, you can also use the request money feature, where you put in all the details and the amount on your end and send your client a link to that, and all they have to do is pay it, making it really simple. To sum up, when it comes to invoicing and receiving money, you want to remove as many barriers as possible to make the process really easy for your client. They're much more likely to pay on time if the process isn't a hassle, so doing things like including a link and making sure the information is really easily readable and displayed in a well laid out invoice is definitely going to help your chances. And not only that, but it's definitely going to show you're a professional as well. In the last video in the series, we're going to talk about client communication and how to handle any objections that you might come across in this process. So click here to see that, and I guess I'll see you over there.